Welcome everyone. It was also a little bit surprise for me to be at this conference, especially on this side before you. So I'm not a software developer. I had a small episode in my life when I ran a software startup, but it was, I think, 4 years ago. It lasted for 1.5 years, and then I stopped and I came back to my daily work. And what I do for a living is pipetting and staring at the microscope for whole days. And so I'm a scientist and I work in the laboratory of Molecular and Cellular Biology here in Warsaw. And I think about 3 years ago, Jakub Nabrdalik told me, there is an informal group, Agile Warsaw, maybe you would like to go there, they are nice guys and so on. From the time perspective, I think that he needed a ride because he didn't have a car at the time. But anyway, I accepted, and sorry, not this direction. And I started to attend to the Agile Warsaw meetings. And at the beginning, I didn't understand everything. Some of the ideas were not clear for me, but I really enjoyed those meetings. And I was coming back to my lab and telling other people, they do really cool stuff, they have nice techniques, and if you could look at this group, there is a little bit of gender imbalance, and when we come back to my work group, there is also a little bit gender imbalance. So. And one of the PhD students in this group, she started to ask me, Iwona, why are you going there? Why are you wasting your time? It doesn't have anything to do with us. And then I thought about Robert Villa's presentation about the Pomodoro technique, and I thought, this is the technique that could help us not to procrastinate when we have to do something else than research. So if we have to do pipetting or staring at the microscope, we will love it, and we can do it for days. But if we have to write a paper or make a presentation or write a thesis, it's really painful for us. And then I hold a small seminar about the Pomodoro technique. It's about the time management for those of you who are not familiar with this technique. And it really helps to eliminate a fear of time that you will not reach your goal before you get to your deadline. And some of people were really excited and they started to use this technique, and some of them were skeptic. And for example, my boss, he used to come to me and said, may I interrupt your Pomodoro? And he thought it was funny, but really it wasn't. And someday I came into his office, I knocked the door, I came into, and he said, please come in 10 minutes. He didn't notice it was me. He said, please come in 10 minutes because I have to finish my Pomodoro. And at that moment, I thought, oh, maybe it could work. And this girl I mentioned before, she was asking me again and again, and now you talked about this technique, but actually, if we do a research, every experiment is different. We can't have some methodology, or how can we use it? Really, Iwona, you should do something else. You really waste your time. And then I took it as a challenge, and I thought we could start with stand-ups. And I managed to talk to a few girls, and they agreed that they have some problems with daily life in a laboratory. And I told them about stand-ups, and I told them where I think which benefits we could obtain if we do a daily stand-ups. And they agreed to do it for a month. And I asked every of them to write on the paper their expectations as they understand the technique, because you have to keep in mind they have never been exposed to any stand-up, Scrum, Kanban on any of those terms. So they wrote on the papers what they expect. We put those papers into envelope, and after a month, we just went through all those expectations. And I was really happy because all of them were met. So when we started to talk, there were not that many rules. We started every day about 9 or 10 when we were in the lab, and then we shared our problems, and sometimes we said also, oh, you know, I want to write an email, and the next day we said, oh, I want to write an email, and the third day suddenly, you know, I talked already more about this writing this email than actually I need time to write this email. And they were also some very specific tasks, like I will finally order stereotypes. This is a fancy machine to do some fancy things with animal brains. So we really managed it. And I think when I talked to them more, and actually we managed even more. First of all, every one of us has own project. I do some my work, some people do their work, and actually we don't really care so much about the results. And suddenly we saw that at some points there are crossroads and we can help each other, that we can really be involved in someone else's work. And it was, for me, it was really nice that we could use not only a Pomodoro technique that can be used, I think, actually everywhere, and can be applied by every person that procrastinate to do some task, but we also managed to apply some techniques taken actually from Scrum. And then I started to think maybe there are also different things that we could adapt in our lab, even though we do not programming. And then I came to the idea that actually we have some parallels. So instead of test-driven development, we can make a figure-driven publication. And instead of pair programming, we could make a pair pipetting. And we could also share our results in the publication. And what does it really mean in our laboratory practice? So actually, when you start to work with the project, from the practical point of view and from my experience from many laboratories I went through, and before this laboratory I work in a bioinformatics field, so I really have some feeling how it works, and usually it's like this. The boss has an idea and he wants someone to do this. There's actually no plan. There's a really high rate of reprioritization. Thank you, Tom. So they change their priorities very often, and actually sometimes you don't really know where you are going to. And on the other hand, when you read the publication, actually what you do, you just go through the figures that show the real results, and then you can assess if you can believe those results or not. So maybe we could make it a little bit turn around and start from planning our figures, what we want to say to the final client, who is the society in this case. So I think that we could really change our minds in the laboratories and start from figures and then see if our results meet those tests, like in a test-driven development. And per pipetting, it's something that assures you that your experiment was done correctly, that even if you do a mistake, there is a bigger chance that someone will see it or will help you understand the results you can't really get. And the shared experiment results, you know, there was a time that there were few authors for some publication, and now I meet even more and more often the publications where the list of authors is actually much longer than the publication itself. And it happens in a really big and famous papers like Nature or Science. And I think it's not really possible to run one-man projects by yourself and not to talk to other people. And I really believe that those tools, even taken from Agile, can help us to get some structure in the research. And when I think about the Agile, it's not this is not only the set of tools we can adapt, but this is also a kind of mindset. And in my laboratory practice, I of course have some small problems, like, I open the fridge and there are no reagents I expect to be there because someone used them and didn't tell anyone, because nobody knows why actually. So, but there are also bigger problems, and science actually everywhere in Europe, but in Poland too, undergoes public procurement law. This is called, in Polish, I will translate it for you who are not familiar with this term, it's prawo zamówień publicznych. And we really suffer from it, because at the beginning of the year we have to predict what we will order through whole the year. And actually in science it's not possible, because your every next step depends on your previous one. So, and there were, people are aware about it, and I think for already more than 3 years, there were many letters sent to Prime Ministry, to Ministry of Science and President, and so on, that this law and this regulation don't work for science. They have to be changed. And the letters were sent by Polish Academy of Sciences, Polish Foundation of Science, and so on, and it didn't work at all. Nobody was interested. Everyone said, yeah, we know it's ridiculous that you have to deal with this law, but actually it's a law, you can't change it. And I was thinking about the way to change the law and to organize opposition, a scientific opposition, and I also knew that it's not possible to collect all the scientists and go in the front of the parliament. It's not possible. They will stay in their labs and they will not move. But I also didn't want to make a war. I didn't want that the people will hate themselves. And I was looking for the inspiration. And then I came to the Agile Manifesto. It's probably, every one of you is probably familiar with it. And I thought, this is actually the mindset I'm looking for. We value public money. We really want to spend it in a right way, but we can't do it the way that was proposed already by the government. And that's why we already changed a little bit this manifesto and use it for our Facebook action. And the title of the action is that the science has tied hands. And we collected the pictures from different laboratories, it is my lab, with tied hands. And we wanted to show that we have equipment, we have money, we have time for our research, but we can't do it because the law doesn't allow us. And I was trying to convince people that this action will work. And here it's the first photo taken in my lab. And some of those people are just students. They didn't know what happens, but they were so scared of me that they said, okay, we will come. But I needed the first photo, and I asked many of my research friends, and they said, okay, we will send you when you have someone else to put the first one. So, I think one and a half a week later, some other people from the institute, when the action started to work, they said to me, why didn't you invite us to the photo? I said, oh, come on, okay, so let's make another one. And they came to my lab, and there was not enough space to make a photo, so we had to transfer ourselves to the seminar room. So it's, again, my institute, but much bigger. And the people get inspired by those photos. They sent, it's a procurement. And they got inspired. They sent different scenarios of those pictures. And I also sent an email to the Ministry of Science that by this action, we just want to support their efforts to change the law. And of course, there were actually not that much efforts to do anything. But as they saw the pictures and they realized that also some newspapers are interested in it, they started to work on it. And actually now the government applied changes, and I'm waiting for the parliament to vote for it. So I just wanted to show you two cases in a small scale in my lab, when I could use the tools that were inspired by meetings with Agile people and the kind of the mindset I got from them. And I really thank Agile Warsaw for this inspiration. And I was also wondering, what are the key factors and when can you adapt some agility in your company? Or this is also inspired by some question asked by the people who attend Agile Warsaw meetings. Sometimes they ask, oh, you know, I work in this rigid company, we really can't change anything. And sometimes it's true, and then you have to change the job. But sometimes if you analyze what is really a value in your company, then you can decide if this company will able to introduce some agility or not. And I think if you agree then that the quality is locked and the quality can't be compromised, and probably also the time and budget, but you can play a little bit around with the scope, then there is a chance that you can adapt Agile in your company. And the same applies to science. We can always play with the scope. We can write a smaller paper. We can do one experiment less. But we can't compromise the quality. We can't say that we will not make some controls because we don't have time or so on. So if you think about your company, try to think about those 3 values. Probably there are more, and certainly Tom has some analysis about it, very complicated. This is the simple one. Taken from those 2 examples. And I think if you apply it and think about your environment, then you will find many more places when you can apply Agile in any form, and then you will get many more examples that could be presented here during the next AgileByExample conference. Thank you.